Hello, welcome back to the channel. I'm sorry it's been a hot minute since I've put up another video, just with school starting up and all extracurricular activities and everything after school. It's been kind of a mess, and I haven't gotten around to a whole lot of reading. So I just haven't had a whole lot of time. But, I am here now to talk about The King of Scars, by Leigh Bardugo. It is the sixth book in the Grishaverse franchise, not counting the two spin-off short story collections that I do not have at the moment. I want to get at some point, but that's not what we're talking about today. Right off the bat, this book is absolutely amazing. I think it took everything that worked with the Six of Crows duology, with the different characters and perspectives and the different story beats and like change perspectives, with the more high political side of the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and took everything that worked and put it all together, and for the most part I think took out everything that was really that went slow. I think like this is by far the best of the Grishaverse for me. It is easily the best book of that I've read and reviewed so far for this channel. And not saying too much, I guess, because it's only book 6, but I think it is far away better than the other ones. Not that the other ones were bad at all. I enjoyed all of these books, but King of Scars was amazing. And I'm going to change stuff out a little bit than usual, because I'm going to do more of an in-depth breakdown of the book. Not full-on, like, beat-by-beat plot points, but, like, the broad overview of the different stories. A bit more than I usually do, than I've done before, because I want to try to change up a little bit. So this book follows Nikolai Lantsov, who is the king of Ravka, Zoya Nyalinsky, who has been in... She is the only character who has appeared in or been referenced in every single book. Actually, that is... Zoya has been, and I think Nikolai are the only two. Genya might have been referenced to Six Crows, but Zoya is one of the few characters who... Zoya is my favorite character. That's why I went to her immediately. She is easily my favorite character, but she is one of the few who's been in all of the books, and I've loved her every time she appears. But we don't know a lot about her, and that changed with this book. We learned so much about her backstory and everything, because okay, I'm going off track. So the book follows Nikolai, Zoya, and Nina. Nina is from the Six of Crows duology. He's one of the main 6. Nikolai and Zoya did both appear in Crooked Kingdom, but are more main characters from more like main important side characters from the original trilogy. And so the branching stories are Nikolai, who is suffering from the remnants of the Darkling magic or the Darkling powers that was used on him to make him like this demon bat thing in the original trilogy. It's him suffering with the remnants of that beast still in him that has like now been waking up. It takes over his body at night, and it's getting more and more powerful. And so it's this internal and external conflict of a literal embodiment of his inner demons, which really cool. And that was a very good part of the story. Zoya kind of stuck with Nikolai the entire time, but Zoya's perspective was more a gateway for I don't know if it's Leah or Lay. I've been saying Lay, but it might be Leah, and I might just be being an idiot with how I'm saying her name. But it's a great way for the author to for Bardugo to explore the fully flesh out Grisha magic as a whole. And I'll go back to all these plot points afterwards. Nina's general plot point is she is a spy in Fjerda, and she has to like hide and like try to be like help save and get Grisha out of Fjerda and back to Ravka. And then like about halfway to 2/3 into the story, we meet this new character who, although we get their perspective of, I would not count as the main character. So, little tangent for this quickly is for me, if it's a book, the main character needs to be we need to be able to read from their perspective more than once, and they have to have been present, not necessarily perspective, but they have to have been present for 3/4 of the book. And then typically, although this could vary, but if it's a series, then, and it's in the beginning, like the first, like for this, it's the first book of a duology, then they have to also survive the book. So Isaac only meets one of these. So Isaac is this person who, after stuff happens with Nikolai and Zoya, the king disappears in Ravka, and there's about to be a ball, so they need to have a replacement king. So they have this list. Nikolai's made a list of people who can pass as him and who he trusts. That the two main members of the Triumvirate, Genya and David, can pick from, and then they can tailor to look like the king before they have to announce, like, oh yeah, the king's gone, which doesn't really work for a country that's not very stable at all, like Ravka. And so, top of the list is a person named Isaac, who is one of the palace guards. And so, he was a really interesting character to read, and we get some of his backstory and everything. But we only meet him in like the last third of the book. So he doesn't meet that requirement for me of being in most of the book. We get multiple chapters. We only get like 5 or 6 chapters in total with him, because he's not one of the main characters. He's not a priority for the story. We as the reader need a view into actually like the Ravkan part of it. So that's why he was there. And then, spoiler alert, I guess, but he also ends up, he dies by the end of the book. So I would not count as the main character. Other people might, and that's fine. And I wouldn't fault you for that, but I personally would not count him as a main character. But so that's that side of the story. The reason Isaac is even in the story in the first place is because there is a cult called like the Cult of the Starless Saint or something, or the Starless One. And it's this group of people who want the Darkling, who supposedly has died, and we were led to believe died in the original trilogy. People want him to be remembered as a saint, someone you can worship and everything. And obviously, for everyone in charge of Ravka, like Nikolai, who has still the demon remnants of his power, and Zoya, who was deceived and tricked by him, and Genya, who was like scarred permanently by him and has like a whole messed up face thing and everything. Like, obviously, for everybody in charge, it doesn't sit well with them for that to be a thing. But they also can't just squash that resistance, because that will just lead to it growing. I mean, it's honestly, what it reminded me of a lot is, if you know, now this might be getting a little bit like political, and I'm sorry if you didn't want that, but like the origin of Christianity, where if you look purely at the historical part of it, like you ignore religion entirely. If you don't look at the religious side and you just look at the historical side of it, you have a growing religion that the people high up in Rome didn't agree with. They killed Jesus through crucifixion, and he was martyred for that. And then after that, again, we're not like, if you pretend you don't like, if you're just saying without the Bible, without like any like Jesus coming back or anything, without, if you ignore, pretend like that, if you just say that didn't happen, just look at like what we can 100% prove from history. I'm not saying that didn't happen. I'm not saying either way. I'm just saying, just look at history. You have a small group of people wanting to push this religion, the people in charge like stopping that, and then that leading to a martyrdom and the rapid growth of that belief. Almost immediately after Jesus' crucifixion, there was a rapid growth in that religion, which ended up leading to Rome becoming the Holy Roman Empire. And Constantine, the Roman Emperor Constantine, agreeing with that religion. I believe he was the first emperor of Rome who was Christian. I don't know, I'm not entirely sure, but I think so. Anyway, but so there's that kind of correlation in the book. So they can't just kill off this cult of the Starless One, because that will then spread it. They even say that, they don't say the whole Jesus correlation, but they say the whole, like, we don't want to make you a martyr. We can't do that. And so the leader of that cult is a guy named Yori. And so, but the power that he talks about is a record, like it is recorded as like a holy site from like other saints that could destroy the demon in Nikolai, like the Darkling's power. So Nikolai and Zoya go out with the cult, with Yori, to that spot to try to see what goes on. Long story short, it's not super explained how they get there. It's just like Zoya gets it just gets pissed off and causes this big old, like, this huge storm, and then Nikolai, Yori, and Zoya end up in this, like, inside the fold, because that's where it is, the Shadow Fold, the remnants of the Shadow Fold, where they meet living, like, the saints who have been alive for centuries, just stuck in this other dimension, almost, space. There's, I think, Els something. I don't think it's Elsbeth. I can't remember. It's Els something. I'm just gonna say Elsbeth. I don't think it's that, but Eliza or something. Like this saint who can turn like a bunch of bees and everything, which is kind of cool, and like control like plants. There's Grigori, who is like a bear man, and then there's Jurdish, Jurdish, who is like this man who can also turn into a dragon. And so through this, now the king's dispute, which is why the whole Isaac thing has to happen. But so the whole time, the king is learning how to control the demon and like summon the demon by himself. And Zoya's learning the depths of Grisha magic and how amplifiers are not very good. Yes, amplifier power, but they more corrupt Grisha magic, because all Grisha had the potential to control everything. There's no reason to be a tide maker or in Inferi or a fabricator or a healer. Like, every Grisha has the potential to be able to do all of it. And Zoya's like, I don't believe you. And so she trained throughout the whole book, and she slowly was able to be more and more powerful, to the point where she, at the end, because Elsbeth, huge spoilers, Elsbeth is evil. She wants to kill Nikolai, use the power of the demon in Nikolai to remake the Darkling using Yori's body. Like the Darkling soul put back into Yori's body, so that she can keep her power and be released from the Shadowfold, and the Darkling can take over. So she kills Grigori, and she pretty much kills Jurdish. So Zoya is able to, while she's distracted, goes up and does this thing, because the whole point they've been talking about is like when you kill an animal, what you're supposed to do is when you take their amplifier, like they also kill you, and then you merge into almost one being. So what happens is she goes up and she kills Jurdish, and he like stabs his claws, because he's in dragon form, stabs his claws into her heart. But then like she's fine. But like the dragon is almost like in her. And then she uses the scales of the body for making two bracelets around her wrists. And so it's not entirely explained, but I fully read it as she could turn into the dragon, just like Jurdish. Because it also does talk about later how she has like her eyes like go slit like and everything. So it is very much, she has dragony aspects, and she fully is able to summon fire and air and all of that very well. So she is one of, if not the most powerful Grisha we've met in the entire franchise now. And she already was very powerful, she's now definitely the top. And so that all happens. Nikolai gets separated from the demon for a little bit, but now they're still reformed. And the Darkling spirit does end up taking over Yuri. But Zoya manages to kill Elsbeth. And they're all free from that because of all the saints are dead. So Zoya, with a ton more power, Nikolai, who didn't end up changing all that much, he has better control over the demon, but he didn't end up changing what he wanted to change. And then Yori, who's on the Darkling, are now all back at the castle for this next book. So I'm excited for that. And then, while that's all happening, it cut to another plot with Nina and Ravka. And this part was, honestly, really hard to read at some points. Not because it was bad, but because it was really, really dark. Because what Nina finds is this munitions camp, which is what everyone's being told. This is just a military munitions base. Sorry, I cannot talk properly. And what she finds out is it's not. It is much, much darker. I'm gonna right here. This is a very, very dark part of the book, and like you might not want to watch. There's non-consensual and sexual assault and drug abuse and that kind of thing. I'm going to talk to. If you're not comfortable with that, I'm just go ahead and leave, because I don't want anyone being uncomfortable on my channel. That's not why I'm here to talk about books for everyone that we can all enjoy, not make everyone uncomfortable. So, but she finds this base is where they're keeping Fjerdan women who end up being Grisha, because you're just born with it. You can't help it. Like, it's not like only these people are born with it. It's Grisha just are born. It's not their fault. They can't control that. And so they're being drugged with Parem, which is, which is the really bad, really addictive drug from the previous duology that only Nina has ever been able to resist temptation after one dose. These women have been being dosed over and over and over again, forced to have children, so not outright said, but almost for sure through rape and sexual assault, because you can't consent when you're high on, like, they're high on drugs and will do anything for another dose. So it's not consensual. And a lot of them are younger women, like 16, like teens, early 20s is what it describes a lot. No, so it was a bit uncomfortable to read, which is, I guess, kind of the point, because the message is how horrible this is. Because the goal, and it's horrible, but if you think of it from the perspective of the Fjordans, it is genius. Horrible, but genius. In the sense that if you get the women pregnant while they're addicted to the drug, and then they'll have the baby, and then as they're breastfeeding everything, they'll still be having the drug in their system, you're going to give birth to babies who are already born addicted to that drug. So most likely their bodies, because they've always, now we're in speculation, because I don't know now what would happen after this, because we haven't seen this from the book. The book didn't talk about any babies who ended up growing up with this after this drug happened. But presumably their bodies would be able to handle the drug because they've been born constantly on it, but they will always be craving it. So you will have entirely faithful and loyal soldiers who will do whatever you want to get their next fix on this drug that makes them super powerful, and then won't die from this powerful drug, presumably. Or they will die, but they don't care, because you can just make more. And so, yeah, it was really, really a lot. So it was like, okay, I'm just going to stop reading for right now, because I'm not, like, you got to be in a headspace to read the Nina chapters. They were very good. This whole book was very, very good. Not bad in any way, but it is, some of the scenes were really hard to read. And we see some characters from before, so like Nina's there, but it's a trio there. So it's Nina, and it's Adric, who I did not mention before, but he was a minor character in the original trilogy. And so he only has one arm after stuff that happens in the original trilogy. These are not meant to replace reading the book. These are meant to be reviews that work with the book. So these should not be like, oh yeah, just I'll watch this to understand the book. That's not what this is. I skip over a ton of stuff. And I implore you to read these books. These books are all amazing. With that being said, there's also this character named Leoni. Like, that's how I pronounced it. It's Leoni. So I mean Leoni. I don't know what else he would say. And she is a new character, I believe. And she is a fabricator who works with like not poisons, but like poisons and all these different things, like ink and stuff. And like forging. She's a fabricator. And so then they meet this girl named Han, or Hane. I don't know. Names are kind of suck when you're reading them, because you don't know how to pronounce them. And Nina starts falling hard, which is interesting. I'm not, like, nothing against having a character be bisexual. There's no problem with that. I don't care if you're straight or bisexual or gay or whatever. It doesn't matter to me. It just seems like her thing is that she is grieving Matthias from the last book, Great Kingdom, and like she sees Han, or Hane. I'm gonna say Hane, because that sounds more feminine, I guess, to me. I don't know. When I say Han, I think of Han Solo, so I'm gonna say Hane. But when she sees Hanae, there's almost no more like, oh, I miss Matthias. Like, once or twice afterwards. And it's like, oh, she's cute. Oh, she's really cute. And it's like, okay, I guess, but I mean, she's still grieving. So I feel like that's a bit rushed. I don't mind it at all. It feels almost a bit rushed. Um, but Hanae, is a Grisha. And what's super interesting with that is her father is Jarl Brum, who I don't know if I mentioned this before, but Jarl Brum is the leader of the Druskull. The Druskull is what Matthias was a part of. It's like this super, like, religious fanatic group in Fjerda who hate Grisha with everything in their being. They think they're witches, should be burned, should be killed, should be everything, right? And so, what is very interesting is Jarl Brum, the leader of that's daughter, is the Grisha. And from this book, he does not know this. What I'm interested in is if he will find out, because that would be. I'm interested in seeing the dilemma there, because a huge part of everything to do with Fjerda is making sure to spare them, like having some semblance of sympathy and empathy, because everyone was born with that doctrine ingrained into them, and presumably Jarl Brum was also raised in that. Now, he is a villain. I don't think he's going to be redeemed, but I do think there would be a genuine interest in seeing a moral conflict between it's my daughter, but it's a Grisha. So I don't know if it will happen, if there is a thing in this next book where he finds out, I hope it's more nuanced than just, oh, you were my daughter, I'm going to kill you now because you're a Grisha. I hope it's more nuanced than that. I'm not sure. I don't know even know if it will happen. I'm just assuming based on the end, because Nina and Hanae opt to stay in Fjerda to help free more Grisha captives. They end up freeing all the ones in that munitions base, but there's probably tens of if not hundreds of more bases throughout Fjerda doing the same thing. But yeah, I think I've kind of hit on all of the points I wanted to hit on. This is kind of a rushed ending. I'm realizing I'm really bad at planning out the pacing of what I want to talk about. But yeah, I talked about the different branching storylines and all that. I will say that I think I like the Zoya and Nikolai plot more than I like the Nina plot. Not that the Nina plot was bad, but one of my favorite things, and I think I mentioned this before, is I love fictional politics. They are incredibly fun for me to read. Real politics, they kind of suck. Let's be honest. Both sides, they just kind of suck. Maybe that's a hot take, I guess, but politics suck. Fictional politics are a lot of fun because you can almost always see, because the authors typically try to be logical. So you can almost always see a logical, track a logical flow through for every different side, for every political faction. You can see a logical through line of this is what they're saying, this is what they're doing, and this makes sense. Not just for the good guys, for the bad guys, for everything. For any morally gray, you can see lines that make sense connecting everything. There's not always too much of that in real politics, but I don't want to get into that right now. But I think there is so much fun to reading fictional politics. So, reading about the bastard king of a crippling, in debt country who is facing a war on potentially 3 separate fronts is very engaging to me, especially when it's a character that I really, really like. Is more engaging than just a character I really like doing a spy mission trying to free these enslaved and captured girls. Again, that's a very good story, and I'm very invested in that. But I think I like Nikolai more than I like Nina. And I think I like the political espionage, almost intrigue of all the factions kind of colliding than I do just more black and white, like freeing these guys from the bad guys of the Nina story. And I love Zoya. I think is my favorite character by far. And we get so much of her story in this. We get so much backstory to her. We get so much. I think she is the most expanded on character in the entire book. Nikolai, we got a lot of his story already in the original trilogy, and we got a lot of Nina's story already in the Six Crows duology. So a lot of their stuff's focused on what's happening now, and Zoya has plenty of that, but a lot of Zoya's stuff is more exploring her backstory, Grisha the magic backstory, and amplifiers and Grisha power as a whole, which is super cool. And it allows Bardugo to go into so much depth and exploration of different ideas and themes using the magic system that I think are some of the most interesting and most intriguing concepts in magic systems that I've read ever. And the whole question of everything is it's all just matter. If you can control this, why can't you control that? It's all the same parts. And the exploration of that kind of question, I find that very, very interesting. And I hope that grows in this next book. This next book is The Rule of Wolves, which it is. This is King of Scars. This is Rule of Wolves. I guess they look similar on camera. The Rule of Wolves is thicker. It's quite a bit thicker. No, I'm very excited to read this. I think King of Scars is number 1. So for anyone wondering, I will give current rankings as of the franchise when I finish this next book. So if no one's keeping track, I'll probably make a post as well. But the current ranking, King of Scars is number 1 on my list because eventually we'll get through all the books on my shelves, and King of Scars is number 1 as of right now. So for the end of the video, what I want to go over is just what I hope will happen in the next book. So first and foremost, I think the Darkling's gonna die by the end of it. I mean, he better. Darkling's gonna die for real this time. I think the whole Hane and Nina, I think the whole stuff in Fjerda, I think Fjerda stuff will be done and figured out by the end of the book. To my knowledge, I have been looking into it. I don't know if there's any more plans for more books in this franchise. I will say going into this, I know the last sentence of this book. So I do have a little bit of spoilers. Which spoilers for anyone else, I guess. I know that Zoya is the queen because I know it's a Zoya chapter, and the end of it is her saying, "Tell Kazbrecker the queen of Ravka has a job for him," which that sets up another book. It hasn't been announced to my knowledge. No. So what I know, all that's going to be released is next year. I believe there will be a short novella released for Six of Crows in that franchise because of the 10-year anniversary that happened this year. Because of this 10-year anniversary of the original Six of Crows publishing, there'll be a novella. But I don't believe there has been another book announced. Hopefully that changes because I really like this franchise and want more. So, but using that knowledge, going on the assumption that this is the last book, then the Fjerda stuff has to end. Even if it's not the last book, the Fjerdans have been the enemy for too long. Not a problem, because they're the mortal enemies to Grisha, it makes sense. But they were minor enemies throughout the original trilogy. They're one of the major enemies. They were the main enemies in Six of Crows. They were minor antagonists in Kherg Kingdom. And they've been the main antagonists of one of the plot lines in this book, plus the minor antagonists in the overall King of Ravka plot, like the Ravkan nation as a whole plot, because they're plotting a attack. And that's all fine, but there's so many other nations we've yet to explore. Like, we spent a whole book just in a city. We spent the entire Kherg Kingdom is in one city in the nation of Kherg. We've been in Ravka for so long, which is fine, because Ravka is the main nation. That makes sense. But I'd rather explore more of the Shu and Novi Zem, because we've barely gotten time in either of those countries. So if we don't get more in this book, I'd rather that be even for later. So Fjerda needs to be done in this book. Hopefully, preferably. Zoya, I know, is going to be queen. Darkling better die. And then I don't know with Nikolai. I think there's something that could happen with Nikolai. I think Nikolai has a pretty good chance to die, to be honest. Which would be unfortunate, because I really like Nikolai as a character, but I think that's a possibility. I do definitely want to see a kiss or love confession or something between Zoya and him, because it's very apparent that they like each other, and they just haven't said anything. Which, yeah, that's a great tension. So that will come out in next book for sure. That has to. So then I could definitely see just her being the queen to his king, which could happen. I'm not entirely sure. I could see maybe him faking his death as the king to get the Lantsov name gone, and then just him being a different person who looks like Nikolai being her husband, but she's the main leader, which that could happen too. I don't know. I don't want Nikolai to die, but I think it's a pretty good chance of him dying. What I want is for him and Zoya to rule together, is what I would prefer. I know Zoya ends up ruling, and I'm going to say, I'll say for my prediction that he dies. I don't want him to. I'll say for my prediction that I'm giving here, I'll say he dies. I think there should be more consequences, though, for the overall thing. I think what I will almost bet money on, because this is a trope that is in almost any YA or like adult fiction, any fiction book typically. 90% of the time, if you have a couple and the female partner, if it's like a straight couple, female partner is like, has a secret or something, or like, I want to tell you something, or whatever, or she does tell the guy something, and it's that she's pregnant, you can almost always say that the guy is going to die. And so what I'm saying for this is, if Genya ends up pregnant at any point in this book, David will die. Which I think that is my guess. That's my out there guess. The other ones were kind of pretty obvious guesses. That's going to be my wild out there guess. Genya will be pregnant, and David will die at some point in the book. But yeah, so those are my predictions and my thoughts and my spoiler review for King of Scars. Let me know down in the comments a few things. First of all, if you read this book before, tell me if you liked it. Tell me how you would rank it between the other books in the franchise. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my opinions. And don't tell me if any of my predictions were correct or wrong. I don't want to know any spoilers, and I will check in the comments. I don't want spoilers for this book. I want to read it and enjoy it less spoilers than I already have. So, but no, that's all I have for now, and I will see you guys next time.